Part of the puzzle, part of the mystery is that this tragedy happened in a very holy place, on a holy day, while people were doing a holy thing. So the mystery is, how does that happen? If it were, God forbid, some other accident, the question wouldn't be so big. But of all places and on all days and for all people, people doing something holy at a holy place on a holy day, doesn't seem right, does it? So the story was back in the 60s, early 60s, somebody wrote a letter to the Rebbe saying that they were completing a Torah scroll, which is a big celebration, a big party. It's a holy event. And there were a lot of guests at the party. And a young woman who was there suffered an aneurysm and died at the party. And people were asking, how does such a thing happen? This is the brief version of the story. The Rebbe's answer was, human beings, by nature, should not be able to understand the Creator. They shouldn't be able to. And when we don't understand the Creator, that's perfectly understandable. We notice that children don't understand adults. A child would not understand a great scientist, even though they're both human. And the difference between them is just a few years and a few classes. In a short time, the child could become himself a great scientist. And yet, the child has no idea what the scientist is doing and what the scientist is talking about. So the distance between them is very small. And yet that little gap is enough to make the scientist a total mystery to the child. So how much more so a human being trying to understand God? It's absurd. And yet, God wants us to know him. So he makes himself knowable in the Torah, through the Torah. And so we're supposed to try to understand as much as we can of God's thinking and God's ways, God's justice. So we have to try. When we try, we discover every soul that comes into this world is given a certain amount of years to live. It's not open-ended. 40 days before conception, the angel announces how long this person is going to live. When the time comes, whenever that is, it can be after 120 years, it can be after 70 years, it can be after 30 years, it can be after 30 days. God forbid to all of them. But that's the reality. People are born for a certain amount of time. When the time comes, the circumstances can be varied, some better, some not so good. So, an old man passing away in his bed, surrounded by his family and people who care, that's better. God forbid somebody dies while traveling out of town, out of the country, where nobody knows him. Not so good. So the circumstances of the death can vary, but nobody dies before their time. Very, very seldom, the Rebbe says, can somebody do something so magnificent that his life is extended beyond what was announced. And very seldom can a person be so evil, so heinous, that his life is shortened from what was announced. The vast majority of people live exactly to the moment that the angel predicted. The last minutes of life, as the first minutes of life, every detail is significant. Every detail is magnified. So the Rebbe says, you cannot imagine how comforting it is for a Jewish woman who is passing away from an aneurysm. And she is comforted by the fact that she is passing away in a room where there's a mezuzah on the door. And in the mezuzah it says, Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, which is what the person passing away is supposed to say with his last breath. But she can't because she suffered an aneurysm. She's paralyzed. But she knows that the mezuzah says, Hear, O Israel, so on. Can't imagine how meaningful that is for her. And to be surrounded by people who care. And the person asking this question of the Rebbe was a doctor who was there, who tried to save her. So the Rebbe says the circumstance in which this girl passed away were not ordinary. It was at the completion of a Torah. It was a Torah celebration. She was surrounded by people who care. There was a mezuzah on the door. All of this because that's what the context that was destined for her passing away. And then the Rebbe says, according to the teachings of the Baal Shem Tov, why did you decide to write a Torah in the first place? Because this girl was destined to pass away at that celebration. So the whole thing was for her. So what the Rebbe did in his answer is he turned the question on its head. Were you thinking that this girl died because she was at a party celebrating a Torah? That's absurd. Whoa, she went to a Torah party. Why did she die there? Well, she didn't die because she was at the party. She died like everybody else because her time was up. Now, it could have happened someplace else, which would not have been as proper and as fitting for her status, for her virtue, for her service, her whole. She deserved to die in the performance of a mitzvah. Why is that so significant? Because the first thing they ask you when you come to heaven is, where are you coming from? Where did they catch you in the middle of? It can be embarrassing. That's why we all want a little warning. Give me, give me a little warning so I can get my act together. I don't want to be embarrassed. Amazing. The Rebbe's vision, the Rebbe's clarity. What are you thinking? That she was being punished for being at the party? What is that? Why can't you appreciate the beauty of what's there in front of your eyes? See, that's why it's so upsetting that we know something wonderful is happening, something mystical, and we can't see it. But if you want to be mystical about it, these 45 souls that died celebrating Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai's yahrzeit, who greeted them in heaven? Obviously, Rabbi Shimon. If you have to go, that's the way to go. The question is, why do we have to go? Shouldn't death be over? Shouldn't it stop already? We know it's temporary. It's been 5,781 years temporary. So the pain is still pain, and the mystery is still a mystery. But I can imagine there are people who passed away who are very jealous. Why didn't I pass away like that under such holy circumstances? So let's look at it for what it is and not get the impression that they died because they went to celebrate a holy event. And why those 45? There were 100,000 people there. Why them? I think we'll find out. They had a special connection to Rabbi Shimon, and therefore it was decreed when they were born that they would pass away on Lag BaOmer at the place where Rabbi Shimon is buried, celebrating his yahrzeit. Nothing less. So I remember when I was a teenager, a chassid came from Israel to be with the Rebbe for Yom Kippur. And they honored him to open the ark for the beginning of the Kol Nidre. And he collapsed in front of the ark and passed away on Yom Kippur in front of the ark in the presence of the entire congregation, in the presence of the Rebbe. He was an older man. They told him not to go. They thought that the trip would be too strenuous for him. But he couldn't resist, so he went. So all the older Chassidim in the room, they were all saying, like, how did he arrange that? Who do you have to bribe to on Yom Kippur in front of the ark? Oh, come on. When they ask him, where are you coming from? Not shabby at all. Where am I coming from? I'm coming from Shul on Yom Kippur in front of the ark. Okay, we're impressed. And then I was present one year in 770 during the dancing on Simchas Torah. And a local chassid, a very, very special man, had a heart attack during the dancing. And all the older chassidim said, oh, that's even better. He danced right into heaven? How do you arrange that? Who do I need to speak to about that? So the death is still tragic, but the circumstances are awesomely holy. Even Bilam, even Bilam, the evil cursor, the evil prophet, even he said, I hope my death will be a death of righteousness. You know, you live your life and you try to be a mensch. You hope you're going to die like a mensch too. That your death will not be overlooked, insignificant, accomplish nothing. We have a Sunday night program for VIPs that you might be interested in. It's informal, it's questions and answers, it's conversation. It's really relaxed, it's really pleasant, enjoyable, informative, and kind of community-like. It's a Sunday night program. There's a Wednesday morning program for the VIPs, and there's a Wednesday night program. All of it just conversation, casual, laid back, unscripted. So join us, take a look, click the link below, and see which of the three suits you best, and join us for some enjoyable conversation.